not done, ma'am.
You said one more
I'm
drink.
not done.
No,
I'm not done.
On July 1st, 2023, firefighters rushed into a burning Florida home, expecting a rescue. Instead, they stumbled upon a nightmare. Inside the smoke and flames lay 79-year-old Michael Cerasoli, stabbed, beaten, and left to die. But the violence wasn't the only shock. What truly stunned investigators was the bizarre stunt his accused killer tried to pull in a desperate attempt to erase the evidence.
With the hammer.
I found it on the bridge. And then I always have a knife with me.
On July 1st, 2023, the whole city of Daytona Beach, Florida, was woken up and was filled with sirens. At 1:46 a.m., emergency dispatchers got a call about a residential fire. Within minutes, firefighters arrived at the modest two-story home where smoke was already rushing down from the upstairs windows. As firefighters pushed through the thick air and smoke inside the home, they quickly realized this was not going to be a simple fire extinguishment. On the second floor, in between all the heat and smoke, they found something horrific. 79-year-old Michael Cerasoli, the homeowner, was found dead on the ground. They also found something even more disturbing on his body.
Hey, it looks like this guy got fucking murdered, dude. It looks like he got gutted about 5 times. And they fucking caught his room on fire and fucking left it.
This is going to be a stabbing and attempted arson. We got one male on the ground with approximately 5 stab wounds. He is down and unconscious. They're working on him and they try to set the house on fire.
His body had multiple stab wounds and severe blunt force trauma to the head. Even before paramedics could examine him, it was clear that this was not just any tragic fire victim. It was a crime scene. Investigators immediately noticed something unusual. Fire patterns showed the blaze had been purposely set. It was not caused by any faulty wiring or an accident. Nearby, they got some shocking evidence. A bloody knife, the likely murder weapon, was found close to the body. Along with this, detectives located 2 cell phones, one belonging to Michael and the other tied to his 35-year-old roommate, Nichole Maks. The scene was unsettling. The combination of stabbing, blunt force trauma, and firebombing pointed to an attempt not just to kill, but also to cover the whole act. For investigators, the first step was obvious. Police began investigating the area and issued a be-on-the-lookout alert for her. Witnesses in the neighborhood told officers they had seen a woman matching Nichole's description fleeing the scene earlier in the night. But to everyone's surprise, something else happened. Around 3 a.m., barely an hour after the fire call, officers spotted Nichole near a local restaurant just a short distance from the home. When officers came closer, what they saw was chilling. Nichole was barefoot, her clothes were messy, and her body was stained with what appeared to be blood. In her hands, she held on tightly to a knife and a hammer. The encounter quickly escalated. Police ordered her to drop the weapons. She resisted, but was eventually taken into custody after a tense standoff. At that moment, all signs pointed to her as the prime suspect in the violent killing of Michael Cerasoli. The next steps in any homicide investigation are straightforward. They had to secure the scene, collect evidence, and gather statements. Detectives wasted no time. Crime scene technicians carefully logged the bloody knife, the phones, and samples of blood evidence throughout the home. The fire marshal confirmed what detectives already suspected. The blaze had been intentionally set in an attempt to cover up the crime. Meanwhile, Nichole's behavior in custody raised a lot of questions. When officers informed her that investigators would be taking her DNA as part of the investigation, she made a strange request. And this one request turned the whole case upside down. All she wanted was a bottle of Diet Mountain Dew. At first, officers thought she simply wanted a drink, but once the bottle was in her hands, she shocked them. Instead of sipping it, Nichole began pouring the soda over her head, her hair, and her body. She drenched herself, desperately trying to wash away any trace of DNA that might link her to the crime. Officers quickly interrupted, but the damage, at least to her credibility, was already done. Despite her strange attempt, forensic science was all ready to ultimately outsmart her. Tests later revealed that Michael's DNA was found on the blade of the recovered knife, and Nichole's DNA was on the handle, an irrefutable connection between suspect, weapon, and victim. From the moment firefighters stepped inside that smoke-filled house, what started as a fire call had turned into something far darker. Within just a few hours, police had a victim, a suspect, and one of the most unusual attempts at evidence tampering that they had ever seen. The discovery of Michael Cerasoli's body did not just expose a violent crime. It set the stage for a case that would make headlines around the world, remembered for the strangest detail of a killer who thought a bottle of soda could wash away murder. There were too many clues and evidence that shook the entire city of Daytona Beach. The investigation into the murder of Michael Cerasoli quickly shifted from fire suppression to homicide inquiry. Once police secured the crime scene and arrested Nichole Maks, detectives began piecing together the pieces of a crime that was as brutal as it was bizarre. The first and most obvious clue brought chills to everyone around. It was the murder weapon itself. A bloody knife was found near Michael's body. Forensic technicians carefully swabbed it, and within days, DNA analysis provided a chilling revelation. Michael's blood was on the blade, while Nichole's DNA was on the handle. This single piece of evidence showed an undeniable physical link between her and the crime. But the knife was only the beginning. Investigators also found 2 cell phones at the scene, Michael's and Nichole's. Messages on Nichole's phone showed a strained relationship between the 2 roommates. Witnesses even later confirmed that their living arrangement had been increasingly tense, filled with arguments and tension. Something was not right with them. Detectives theorized that what started as a heated argument turned into deadly violence. Then came the most important clue. It was nothing but the fire itself. Fire marshals came to the conclusion that the blaze had been intentionally set, most likely after Michael had already been killed. This detail showed a very disturbing picture. Not only had the suspect killed her roommate, but she had also attempted to destroy evidence by setting fire to the home. The arson charge then later became a crucial part of the prosecution's case. But this was not it. There was more to the story. The most unforgettable clue did not come from the crime scene. It came directly from Nichole's actions after her arrest. When she was told that investigators would collect her DNA, she requested a bottle of Diet Mountain Dew. Officers, who were unaware of her intentions, granted the request. What happened next would become the strangest and cruelest hallmark of the case. Nichole poured the soda all over herself, her hair, her skin, even her clothing, believing that the acidic liquid might somehow wash away or destroy DNA evidence. It was a strange and desperate move, one that showed her state of mind and, ironically, made her appear even guiltier. Detectives later remarked that while they had seen many attempts to tamper with evidence, this was the first time they had ever encountered someone using soda as a supposed forensic eraser. But to her surprise, of course, her plan did not work. Advanced forensic testing still confirmed the DNA match. But in the eyes of prosecutors, her act was not just bizarre, it was incriminating. It showed consciousness of guilt, a clear sign that she knew she was responsible for the crime and was trying hard to cover her tracks. Theories about motive began to rise. Some neighbors described Michael as a quiet, elderly man, who mostly kept to himself. Nichole, however, was seen as unpredictable and uneasy. Police reports were even more damning. The reports suggested that she struggled with substance abuse and mental instability. Detectives theorized that a quarrel, possibly about money, living arrangements, or personal disputes, might have heated up, turning over into violence. The brutality of the attack added weight to that theory. Michael had not simply been stabbed, he had also suffered blunt force trauma to the head. This clearly showed rage, overkill, or, at the very least, a violent struggle. Combined with the fire, the scene pointed not to a crime of passion alone, but to the pre-planning involved in the cover-up. Another theory considered by investigators was that Nichole may not have intended to kill Michael initially, but once he was dead, panic drove her decisions. Setting the fire, fleeing barefoot, and later trying to wash away DNA with soda. In this reading, the crime was impulsive, but the cover-up was calculated. Either way, the clues told a damning story. The knife, the fire, the phones, the blood evidence, and the Mountain Dew stunt all painted the picture of a suspect desperately trying to erase what she had done. By the time detectives finished their review, there was little doubt about what had happened. The challenge for the prosecution would not be proving that Michael Cerasoli was killed. It would be convincing a jury that Nichole Maks's actions amounted to deliberate, premeditated murder, not simply a crime brought out of chaos. And that debate of premeditation versus impulsive violence would take the center stage once the case went to trial. The courtroom had seen shocking arguments that brought chills to everyone around. By the time Nichole Maks appeared in court, her case had already attracted national attention. The shocking details, including the fire, the DNA-covered knife, and the bizarre Diet Mountain Dew stunt, gave the trial a mixture of horror and fright. The courtroom became the stage where prosecutors, defense attorneys, and experts clashed over not just the facts, but over the interpretation of Nichole's intent. The prosecution's case was more than damning. They were ready to put Nichole behind bars at the earliest. From the very start, prosecutors showed Nichole as a cold-blooded killer who not only murdered her elderly roommate, Michael Cerasoli, but also went to great lengths to cover her tracks. Their narrative was simple yet damning. She stabbed Michael to death, struck him with blunt force trauma, set his home ablaze to destroy evidence, and then attempted to erase DNA with soda once arrested. The DNA evidence was the centerpiece. Experts testified that Michael's blood was found on the blade of the knife, while Nichole's DNA was clearly present on the handle. This direct forensic link left little room for doubt. To make their arguments stronger, they brought in the next important piece of evidence. They came in with the Fire Act. Fire investigators explained how accelerants were used and how the blaze had been planned and set after the crime. Prosecutors argued this showed consciousness of guilt, which was a clear attempt to cover up the crime. Then came the most dramatic moment. It was when detectives described Nichole's Mountain Dew stunt. Jurors listened in stunned silence as officers recalled how she poured soda over herself in custody, trying to wash away potential evidence. To the prosecution, this was not just bizarre. It was an admission without words, a desperate act by someone who knew they were guilty. The defense's strategy was twisted. Nichole's defense team faced a huge battle. With forensic evidence stacked against them, they shot on intent and mental state. Their central claim was that this was not a pre-planned murder, but rather a chaotic act of violence charged by emotional instability, substance abuse, and desperation. They described Nichole as a deeply troubled woman, struggling with mental health issues and addiction. The defense also argued that she and Michael had a rocky living arrangement, and that on the night of the murder, a heated argument happened that went beyond control. To everyone's shock, the defense took a whole turn. The defense tried to downplay the Mountain Dew incident. They argued it was the act of a panicked, irrational person and not of a criminal mastermind. In their telling, Nichole's actions were not the evidence of calculated guilt, but rather the product of confusion and fear. They asked the jury to consider a lesser charge, such as manslaughter, rather than first-degree murder. But then came the turning point of the trial. It was the witness testimony's witnesses added emotional weight to the proceedings. Neighbors testified about the smoke and flames that night, and some recalled hearing shouting before the fire. Friends of Michael described him as a gentle, private man, making the violence all the more shocking. Police officers gave testimony about Nichole's arrest, her odd behavior, and her attempt to avoid DNA collection. Their accounts made the prosecution's argument even stronger, that she knew exactly what she was doing. Jury deliberation was shocking. When the trial moved to jury deliberation, the key question was planning. Did Nichole intend to kill Michael, or did she lose control in the heat of the moment? The knife wounds, the blunt force trauma, the fire, and the DNA all weighed heavily. But what ultimately shook the jury was the pattern of cover-up. The purposeful setting of the fire and the Mountain Dew incident were seen as acts of someone trying to outsmart the system, not as the random behavior of a panicked individual. And then the verdict came. After hours of deliberation, the jury came to a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder and arson. Nichole Maks was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, making sure that she would never walk free again. The judge emphasized the brutality of the crime and the shocking attempt to obstruct justice. So what was the aftermath of all this? The trial left many in Daytona Beach shaken. Reporters covering the case noted how it highlighted two chilling themes: the fragility of everyday relationships and the strange lengths people will go to when confronted with the reality of their crimes. For Michael Cerasoli's family, the verdict brought justice, but not closure. They lost a father, brother, and friend in a manner that was both violent and senseless. For the public, the case became infamous not only for the brutality of the murder, but also for the bizarre soda stunt, a tragic story forever remembered as the Mountain Dew murder. In the end, the story of Nichole Maks and Michael Cerasoli is not just about a brutal crime. It's about the disturbing ways desperation, violence, and denial can collide. Michael, a 79-year-old man, likely thought of his home as a place of safety. But on July 1st, 2023, that safety was shattered by the very person he shared it with. The discovery of his body, the flames that tore through his house, and the blood-stained knife left behind painted a grim picture of betrayal. And then there was the detail that made headlines everywhere: Diet Mountain Dew. The image of a suspect pouring soda over herself to erase DNA wasn't just bizarre, it became symbolic of the case itself. A desperate, almost absurd act that revealed just how far someone might go to escape accountability. But here's the truth: the soda stunt did not work. Science won. DNA told the story Michael could no longer tell, and the justice system ensured that Nichole Maks was held responsible. This case reminds us of something chilling. Danger does not always come from the shadows. Sometimes it lives under the same roof. A roommate, a partner, even a friend. Anyone can harbor secrets darker than we could ever imagine. It also forces us to ask difficult questions. How well do we really know the people we live with? What pushes someone to turn from roommate to killer? And how many warning signs do we miss before tragedy strikes? For investigators, this case was about following the evidence even when the suspect tried to wash it away. For the community, it became a cautionary tale about trust and vigilance. And for the rest of us, it hangs as a story that is both horrifying and unreal. A case where a simple can of soda became part of a murder investigation, forever etching the phrase Mountain Dew murder into true crime history. As we close this chapter, remember Michael Cerasoli was not the victim of a strange and shocking crime, but as a man whose life was cut short by violence he did not deserve. In the world of true crime, some stories fade, but others stay with us, haunting, bizarre, unforgettable. This is one of them. Because when someone tries to wash away guilt with Mountain Dew, we're reminded that the truth, no matter how hard you try to hide it, always rises to the surface. This case shows the strange lengths people will go to hide their crimes, even when the world ultimately proves them wrong.